There's something that happens when Americans visit or move to Mexico. They come and enjoy the weather, the food, and the culture. But then some of them somehow end up doing things that just drive Mexicans crazy. That's why I made this video. Hopefully we can revive their reputation before it's too late. These are 20 things that Americans do in Mexico that completely annoy Mexicans. And this isn't just my opinion, nor did I just make these things up. Everything in this video comes straight from Mexicans who left comments on my past videos, explaining what's really bothering them when people from the USA and even other foreigners visit Mexico. Number 1, bringing US politics into Mexico. One of the quickest ways to annoy Mexicans is when Americans show up and start flaunting their politics. They flaunt it like it's part of their vacation package. Visitors are actually wearing mega hats and t-shirts. They bring up debates that no one really wants to hear about, guns and walls, and act like Mexico is the perfect place to share their opinions. But I don't think most people care here. So leave your politics at home. You come to Mexico for beaches and tacos, not to campaign or support whoever you support. And the disrespect hits harder because of what those politics often mean. Many Mexicans know what MAGA stands for when it comes to Mexican people. And it's not very kind. It's actually pretty horrible. The idea of strolling through Mexico in gear linked to anti-Mexican ideas feels like rubbing salt in an open wound. And it tells them that we don't like you back home, but we're happy to enjoy your country, only when it suits us. Mexicans already have their own politics, their own debates, and their own challenges. They don't need outsiders bringing other arguments with them. They don't belong here. When an American shows up in a MAGA shirt or starts preaching about American laws, it doesn't just feel out of place. It feels like someone's trying to overshadow Mexican people in their own country. Of course, everybody has the right to their own opinion. I'm not saying you can't support what you want. That's fine. But when visitors flaunt US politics in Mexico where they don't belong, I'll say it. If Mexicans don't want to say it, I'll tell you now, because most Mexicans are too polite to tell you. It's just straight up disrespectful. Mexicans didn't invite the argument, and they don't need reminders of what Americans think about them, because they already have an idea in their head that you need to change soon. Maybe it's already too late. I don't know. So the next time you pack for a trip, leave the campaign gear at home. Mexico isn't the place to parade US politics. It's a country with its own culture, its own pride, and its own voice. Just leave them out of it. The world needs less of it. We already see the charades on TV in every country. Number 2, trying to change Mexican food. Nothing makes Mexicans sigh louder than Americans marching into Mexico and trying to rewrite the menu. Tourists probably show up at taco stands asking for hard-shell tacos, yellow cheese, extra mild salsa. Like real Mexican food should taste like the Mexican food back home. The food issue gets even funnier when Americans brag about their hometown Mexican spot being more authentic. Imagine going to a place like Oaxaca, which is basically food heaven, and saying these tacos are not as good as the ones back home. The truth is, Mexican food is built on traditions that go back thousands of years. From the corn, beans, chili, to even the chocolate. These aren't just ingredients for food. They're ingredients of the culture. When tourists demand changes, it feels like they're saying that centuries of cooking here, it's not good enough. And apparently, Americans keep trying. They really keep trying to change the food. I mean, if you want Taco Bell, stay in the US. Number 3, demanding everyone to speak English. Some Americans come to Mexico and expect everybody, businesses, locals, servers, to switch over to English. But here's the thing they're missing. Most people prefer to speak Spanish, especially outside of tourist zones. And if you're walking around acting like everyone should accommodate to you because you just speak English, it doesn't come off very confident. It comes off pretty disrespectful and arrogant. Not just the comments in my other videos agree, but look it up online. Look on Reddit forums. Go look it up. Even in tourist areas, it's basic manners to learn a few words at least. Say gracias instead of thanks. Por favor instead of please. Show that you're trying a little bit at least. You don't need much to be appreciated. It's not about being fluent. It's about showing a little bit of respect and not assuming everybody knows English. To me, this might sound like I'm making it up, but a lot of Mexicans are saying that English speakers show up in Mexico and demand locals to speak English. Like, I don't know if you forgot, but we're in Mexico. The national language is Spanish. And Spanish isn't even the only language spoken in this country. Mexico has well over 60 indigenous languages that are actually still spoken. So depending on where you are, the native language might not even be Spanish. And maybe it's me, but I get the feeling that these same people, when they're back in the US, they're the first ones yelling from the rooftops, everybody better learn English if they come to America. But now you're in Mexico. And what, suddenly that logic just disappears? And yeah, that's the energy that Mexican people are picking up on. And it doesn't look good on any of us. Number 4, saying Mexican healthcare is dangerous. Some Americans warn each other, don't get sick in Mexico, the hospitals are dangerous. And if Mexican people hear this, they probably roll their eyes because millions of people here rely on Mexican healthcare every single day. And it works. The idea that it's unsafe comes from stereotypes. Actually had my son here. I did, and my wife had my son here. And it was amazing. It was probably a lot cheaper than the US. There's amazing doctors here. While some Americans trash talk Mexican hospitals, thousands of Americans travel south every year on purpose for medical care. It's actually called medical tourism, and it's massive. People come for dental work, eye care, surgeries, and even big procedures like knee replacements, all because quality is solid here and the cost is just a fraction of what it would cost in the US. And of course, like anywhere, not every clinic is perfect. You definitely have to do your research and figure out where to go. Just like the US, there are good hospitals and bad ones, but painting the entire system as unsafe insults every Mexican doctor and nurse who keep their communities healthy every day. So next time someone says don't trust the Mexican healthcare, the truth is simple. Millions do, and many Americans already depend on it too. Number 5, failing to pay local taxes in Mexico. Apparently, some Americans come to Mexico to buy houses here or stay long term and just act like they're still on vacation. And what I hear is some of them don't even pay property taxes and they don't register with the tax system here and don't report any income. Let's start with the basics. Yes, Mexico has property taxes. And apparently it's not expensive in most places, but a lot of foreigners don't pay it. They just either don't know or they just don't care. Then there's digital nomads and retirees. They stay here for months or sometimes even years, working online, renting apartments, living full time, but some of them never officially become residents and they end up not paying a single peso in taxes. The problem is if you live in Mexico for longer than half a year, longer than 6 months, you're technically a resident here. And that means you're supposed to report your income, even if your income is from Canada or the US, or even somewhere else in the world. Mexico has tax agreements with countries like the US and Canada to avoid double taxation on people. But just because there's these tax agreements doesn't mean that you can just ignore taxes altogether in Mexico. If you're here full time and you use things like roads, you should be contributing just like everyone else here. And this is where the tension comes from. Mexicans work hard and pay their taxes. Then they see foreigners living comfortable, skipping rules, and not giving back at all, especially in neighborhoods where prices have gone up because of foreigners. It doesn't sit well with the people here when the people causing the shift aren't even paying into the system. So yeah, if you're living in Mexico, you own a home, run a business, even a business online, or stay long term, don't act like a tourist. Do the right thing and pay your share. Number 6, not giving Mexican culture the respect it deserves. At the end of the day, it all comes down to this. One of the biggest things I hear from Mexicans again and again is that a lot of Americans who come here just don't respect their culture. And honestly, that's what all these other points in this video lead back to. Whether it's ignoring the language, breaking the rules, mocking traditions, or acting like the country should just adapt to you, it all points to the same problem, a lack of respect. No, that doesn't mean you have to wear a sombrero or memorize every tradition, but it does mean that being aware that you're in someone else's country with different customs, a different language, different rhythms, and different values. So just remember that. The truth is, you don't have to love everything about Mexico. But if you're living here or even just visiting, you should at least try to understand a little bit. Because when you treat the culture like it's just beneath you, or that it should adjust to your preferences, people really feel that. You're not just a tourist anymore. You're part of the environment. So act like a guest and stop being such a harsh critic about things that you actually don't even know. Number 7, treating Mexicans like they're beneath them. There's a few things that get under the people's skin here, and that's Americans acting like Mexicans are their personal staff. It shows up in little ways like snapping their fingers at waiters, trying to rush taxi drivers, or talking down to store clerks, or pretty much anybody. The attitude says, I'm the boss and I know better, and you're the help. And this behavior isn't limited to restaurants. Some Americans treat housekeepers, drivers, or tour guides like they're background extras in their vacation movie. And while most visitors will never admit it, the body language says everything. Ignoring greetings, refusing to make eye contact, or acting annoyed if a local doesn't speak English perfectly. Let's not mention if someone isn't getting something done fast enough that it should be. The irony is that Mexicans pride themselves on hospitality. Most Mexicans will bend over backwards to make the visitors feel welcome. So when that effort's met with straight up ignorance, it hurts. And it's just plain rude. Some Mexicans even say in my comments that we treat you like family and you treat us like employees. It's not good. Now, would you call out a tourist acting this way, or would you let them embarrass themselves? Because to local people, the problem isn't Americans visiting. It's when visitors forget that they're actual guests to this country and start acting like they own the place.
Number 8, buying beach property and saying that the beach is private.
Some foreigners think that buying a beachfront home means that they own the sand in front of it, but that's not how it works in Mexico. All beaches are public property. Legally, the first 20 meters from the tide line belongs to the federal government, not private owners that own the house on the beach. Blocking access and claiming a private beach isn't just rude, it can actually get you fined or even land you in prison for up to 12 years. Now, here's where the clash happens. Mexicans, they love to party, especially on the beach. And when they do it on the beach, they bring loud music. They bring like big speakers and they play loud music and they dance and they party and they have fun. But to be honest, they do that everywhere when they party. Even here in Mexico City, in the middle of a nice neighborhood where I live, sometimes people blast music on weekends. They blast it until like 4 in the morning and it's really loud. But you know what? That's just the culture. Instead of asking to join, some foreigners just get upset and try to kick the locals right off the beach. But then again, you have to remember that the beach isn't yours. It's just how people celebrate here. And I'm sure if you ask most Mexicans if you can party with them, they would be more than happy to celebrate with you, to party all night with you if you wanted to. And in these cases, police, they won't do anything for the most part. I've been told that there's a noise curfew even in my area, but to be honest, it's not enforced. So I don't even know if it actually exists. In a lot of other areas, especially beach areas, there might not be any curfew, any noise curfew whatsoever. And like I said, if there is, the police probably don't enforce it. But when my neighbors party really late, this is what I do. I close my window, turn on my AC, turn on a sound machine, and then I don't hear anything. Nothing bothers me. I can sleep all night. Problem solved. If I can figure it out without even trying to change anyone around me, you can probably too.
Number 9, they call themselves Americans.
People from the US show up in Mexico, and when they're asked where they're from, they say America. But that's when the eyes start rolling. Because in Mexico, the word America doesn't just mean the USA, it means the entire continent. Entire continent from Canada to Argentina and everything in between. When US tourists say that they're American, Mexicans feel like nobody else matters. They're just disregarded. But the worst thing you can do is start arguing back with people. Usually people will say like, well, you know what it means. And really it's kind of like saying, I get the last cookie because it's mine, because everybody knows it. This tactic might work in kindergarten, but it doesn't work when you're talking about an entire continent. For Mexicans, this isn't just a word game. It's about respect, pride, and who gets to claim the label for the entire continent. Just think of it like this. They've had outsiders trying to conquer their country for centuries. So when someone shows up casually and says, I'm from America, it kind of hits a nerve. And I completely get it. Here's the thing though, it's not hard to be respectful. Even if someone corrects you about the word America, you can just say, okay, agree to disagree, and just move on. You don't have to agree with them. They don't have to agree with you. You don't have to debate it either. And doing all that, you're just letting your ego get in the way. So don't let it get in the way, especially when you're in someone else's country. You don't have to see eye to eye with everybody on everything. But kindness goes a long way. If you can't handle being respectful in simple conversations, maybe traveling here isn't the right thing for you.
Number 10, suing a restaurant over loud music.
This one is more of a story, but I think it needs to be on its own spot on the list. In Puerto Vallarta, an American couple actually tried to sue Gabby's restaurant, a place that's been around for over 35 years. And they sued them because they said the music was too loud. It's actually pretty big news down here. But imagine that. You move to a lively Mexican beach town, settle near a long-standing, well-loved restaurant that's been there for a long time, and your first move is to try to shut it down because of their vibe. And the real wild part, actually the good part about it, is that the community didn't back the homeowners. They rallied around the restaurant. Why? Because Gabby's wasn't the problem. They were part of the culture, and they've been there long before that couple even showed up. And to be honest, this is where people need to do their homework. If you're planning to rent or buy a home in Mexico, you should probably be familiar with the area first. Get to really know it. Some neighborhoods are loud, some beaches have parties, some restaurants have live music, but that's all part of the charm. And it's part of the reality living in Mexico. And to be honest, if the locals didn't like the music at that restaurant, it wouldn't have lasted 35 years. You're not walking into a noise complaint. You're walking into someone else's lifestyle and acting like you need to change it, or it needs to change for you. That kind of energy doesn't go well anywhere, but especially not in a place where community, music, and celebration are baked into the culture.
Number 11, overstaying tourist visas.
A lot of gringos stay in Mexico past 180 days that they're allowed to stay here on a tourist visa. And let's be clear, that's breaking immigration law. It can lead to fines, bans, or even deportation. And honestly, I don't blame Mexicans for getting frustrated with this. They have to follow the rules, so it's a no-brainer to expect everyone else to follow the rules too. But some foreigners come down here and just act like those rules just don't apply to them. Now, from what I've heard, and this is just hearsay, if you overstay your visa in Mexico, most of the times you just pay a fine or get sent back home to your country. It's not super harsh, but imagine flipping that around. In the US, if someone breaks immigration law, they're not just fined. They're hunted down, locked up, and sometimes detained for months or even years. Americans treat them like some sort of criminal. So it's kind of wild to see Americans come to Mexico and just casually ignore the law and then act like it's no big deal. And there's this one comment that I get on my videos all the time from people outside of Mexico, and it really bothers me. It says, "Why do they all want to come here then?" Referring to the idea that all Mexicans want to move to the US illegally. Like they all just want to jump the border and live in the US without any papers. So for those types of people, let me clear this up for you now. Not all Mexicans want to move to the US, especially illegally. Only a small percentage do. Most Mexican people are happy where they are, close to family and living their lives. And meanwhile, there are thousands of Americans living in Mexico illegally, overstaying visas, not paying taxes, and flying under the radar. So if we're going to talk about immigration, just remember this, that this issue doesn't go just one way.
Number 12, saying that all Latinos are the same.
First, we're going to go over this. People in the US are often categorized like Latinos or Hispanics to group Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Colombians, etc. Everybody together, mostly for demographics, politics, or media representation. Now, I don't think this word is politically correct. I don't think Mexicans even like this word to be used for them. That's the first thing. The other is saying, well, you're basically all the same. That's another problem, right? Because it's not even close. Mexico is not Colombia. Guatemala is not Argentina. And saying that for me is like pointing at a Canadian and calling them a Texan. There's no way any Canadian would like that. Some Americans lump entire continents together under one word. And for Mexicans, it's not just an innocent mistake. It feels like their whole identity is being erased. And it feels that way for a good reason. This comes up every time people talk about the border. A lot of people act like it's only Mexicans coming over the border or going over the border to the USA. And they act like all the people crossing the border are the same type of people. But that's just not reality. The people crossing at the border illegally, you see all different kinds of people there. People from Central America, South America, and yeah, even as far as China or Africa. It's not just one group. It's a big mix of people. But what Americans and other people love to do is clump everybody together because it's just easier that way to direct the narrative when there is a narrative. And a lot of times there is one. So just be careful of what you say. The truth is that North, Central, and South America is a patchwork of cultures, languages, and traditions. Saying everyone is the same is like saying French, Germans, and Italians are the same, just because they live in Europe.
Number 13, wearing swimsuits everywhere.
Mexicans know that the beachwear belongs at the beach, and Americans and some other foreigners, not so much. They don't know this. There's tourists that wander through grocery stores shirtless, sit down at taco stands in bikinis, and walk down the street like they're starring in a swimsuit commercial. For Mexicans, it's not just awkward, it's kind of disrespectful. The issue isn't that swimsuits are offensive, it's that Mexico has a strong culture of modesty, especially outside of beach zones. Families bring kids to restaurants, people gather in plazas, and somebody walking around half naked just feels out of place. It screams, I'm a tourist, and I don't really care. And I don't think that's a vibe that any of you want to give off. So just be mindful of that. Unless your goal is to become the main character of an online rant, a shirt and a little bit of research about the local culture, it definitely goes a long way. So just look into it before you travel anywhere, because there's other countries around the world that feel this way too.
Number 14, treating Mexico as a cheap playground.
Thinking Mexico is always dirt cheap leads to all kinds of disrespect. You see some tourists walking in local markets and offering half the asking price for something that is already way cheaper than back home. I hear stories of people tipping like 10 pesos. That's only 50 cents US after a full meal or haircut. Now come on. It might not seem like a big deal to those people, but for local Mexican people, it feels like exploitation. It feels like you're here just to squeeze every peso you can out of the people who are already working hard for not that much. And yeah, of course, Mexico can be more affordable. But that doesn't mean everything's negotiable or that people here are super desperate and need your money. That mindset turns into this gross bargaining hunter attitude where tourists treat every local vendor like a flea market. You need to remember you're talking to real people. Somebody's dad, somebody's abuela. That lady at the food stand, she's been there since 6 a.m. grinding to feed her family. And here you are trying to save 20 pesos. Wow, you saved $1. And some people see this saving as some sort of win, but it really isn't. And the same goes for tipping. If you wouldn't tip a $1 and a $30 meal back home, why would you do it here? So if you're living or traveling in a country where your dollar already stretches further, already consider it as a blessing. Don't turn it into a reason to just give people less. Maybe use it as a reason to give some people more, or at least treat people with respect that they deserve. Because the truth is, locals notice. Mexican people, they really notice. They talk about it. They remember the horrible ones, even though there might be 100 good ones. They'll remember that one horrible person. And they'll remember the difference between someone who showed up humble compared to someone who just came to take advantage of people.
Number 15, gentrifying neighborhoods and pricing locals out.
A lot of Mexicans are angry, and honestly, it's understandable. Gringos and other foreigners are showing up in big numbers, but they're not spreading out evenly. A lot of them are only moving to the same few trendy neighborhoods. Places like Roma Norte, Condesa, parts of Oaxaca, Tulum. And what happens next? Prices start to skyrocket. In Mexico City and other hotspots, American renters, especially digital nomads, come with a stronger currency. And suddenly landlords start flipping apartments. They raise rents and list everything on Airbnb. It's not just the wealthy doing this either. Even middle-class foreigners are outbidding locals without even realizing it. And what this does is drive local people outside of their neighborhoods, the ones they lived in for decades. People who grew up in these neighborhoods and areas, these working class families, artists, students, seniors, are all being priced out of their own homes. Meanwhile, cafes are filling up with laptops, rent triples, and locals feel like strangers in their own city. And what this is really isn't about money anymore. It's about culture, history, and belonging. It's not that Mexicans don't want foreigners here. Most Mexicans are warm and welcoming. But when the entire neighborhood starts to shift to cater outsiders and locals can't afford to live in the place where they were born, then that's where resentment starts to build. And it starts to build fast. So if you're moving to Mexico, just know where you choose to live, how you rent, and what you pay has a ripple effect.
Number 16, spending US dollars in Mexico and driving up prices.
One of the biggest frustrations that I hear from Mexicans in my comments is with American tourists and money, specifically how they spend US dollars here and not Mexican pesos. In beach towns, visitors hand over bills like it's normal. They hand over US bills like it's nothing. Vendors and restaurants and other places accept them. Of course they do. But the ripple effect over time is pretty ugly. Prices go up and suddenly the people that live in Mexico are paying more for tacos, taxis, and even rent. Picture this. You go and grab tacos for like 40 pesos, right? Like 3, 4, 5 tacos. It depends where you are. But then a tourist strolls in and drops a $5 bill and waves off the change. For the vendor, it's tempting to adjust prices to match the gringo's wallet. And by tomorrow, that same taco stand could be charging double the price for its tacos. And what happens is that the people that live there, that are from there, they end up having to pay these prices too. And what adds fuel to the fire is tipping at restaurants. What I hear is that even tips are causing problems at like restaurants and stuff like that. Many Americans sometimes tip way more than they should or that a local person would, thinking they're being generous. I've heard this many times in my comments. But when those restaurants and bars get used to oversized tips, it will raise expectation. I mean, it's a good thing that people are getting more money, but everything around it starts to inflate and it starts to strain the local people that can't match these dollars. And what feels like generosity to you can feel like inflation for everybody else that lives there. For Mexicans, I don't think the issue is rejecting tourists because there's large economies inside Mexico that rely on tourists. When Americans insist in paying in dollars and tipping like they're in Las Vegas, the real cost isn't pesos. The real cost ends up being resentment. And I see a lot of it in my comments.
Number 17, complaining about noise in Mexico.
Some foreigners come to Mexico and can't stop complaining about the noise. The street vendor yelling, the guy in the speaker selling tamales, the roosters at 5 a.m. maybe, dogs barking, motorbikes with no mufflers, cars blasting music. And yeah, I get it. It can be loud sometimes really loud. But this is one of those things where if you're moving to Mexico, you've got to understand this. It isn't a bug in the system. It's the actual system. There's nothing wrong with it. This is what life sounds like here. It's not quiet suburbia. It's not sanitized or soundproofed. And I love that. The streets are alive. There's a culture here of street hustle and public energy. People make a living selling tamales, gas, fruit, ice cream. They do it on foot, on bikes, and from loudspeakers on trucks. Roosters crow because they're not illegal and nobody's calling bylaw enforcement to shut them up. And motorcycles? Well, I guess they just like making noise. But here's the thing. In Mexico, to Mexican people, it's not personal. Nobody's trying to disturb you. They're just living, making a living, doing what they've always done. And when foreigners come in and act like it's some kind of problem to fix by calling the cops, making noise complaints, or trying to pressure landlords into silencing streets, it definitely doesn't go over well. Mexican people don't accept it because locals aren't asking for this quiet. They're used to it. They're a part of it. It's only newcomers who expect the world to go mute so they can focus on their Zoom calls or something like that. If noise was a big issue for you, there are ways to deal with it. Get a white noise machine, earplugs, seal your windows, pick a quieter neighborhood, but don't move to a lively part of Mexico and act shocked when people live out loud. See, there's a dog barking right now, but this country isn't going to bend to your peace and quiet expectations. It's not supposed to bend to you. You're the guest here. Remember that.
Number 18, acting shocked about how safe Mexico actually is.
Americans land in Mexico and instantly treat every neighborhood like it's some type of crime scene. They clutch your bag, they comment about cartels, and they ask locals questions like, is it safe to walk outside right now? Meanwhile, it's like 2 p.m. Kids are literally playing outside in the streets. To Mexicans, this isn't just insulting, but it's also hilarious. The idea that Americans have about Mexico, it's just too funny. It's like visiting New York City and seeing a hot dog cart and asking the vendor if it's safe to buy food without getting robbed. The locals just can't help but laugh because the paranoia says more about the tourists than it really does about Mexico. Of course, crime exists in Mexico. And for majority of the places in Mexico, it's just normal everyday life. And I think what Mexicans will tell you and what I'll tell you is if you're too scared to come, maybe don't visit. The funniest part to me is how selective the fear can actually be. Some Americans avoid neighborhoods but have no problem getting blackout drunk at a tourist bar. And for me, the math doesn't add up at all. So here's the question. If you want to visit Mexico, do you want to see a country for what it is or for what a Netflix crime show shows you and told you what it is? Because if you keep acting shocked about safety in places where families live and they live normal everyday lives, the only real danger is being roasted by locals or me.
Number 19, ignoring firearm laws.
Trying to bring or use firearms in Mexico isn't just illegal. It's straight up tone deaf. This isn't the US where carrying a gun is seen by many as some sort of personal right or survival plan. I don't know what you think Mexico is, but it's not the US. Here, guns are heavily restricted, and the culture around safety is completely different than they think in the US. In Mexico, owning or carrying a firearm without proper authorization is a serious federal offense. You can't just bring one in your luggage. You can't buy one at the gun show. You can't just carry one just in case. And if you get caught with that firearm without a proper permit, you're not getting a warning. You're getting prison time. But even beyond the law, there's a huge cultural difference in how people think about guns here. In the US, some people are raised with the belief that carrying a weapon may make them safer, stronger, or more prepared. But in Mexico, that mindset doesn't fly. Here, guns are associated with crime, violence, and danger, not personal safety. So when a foreigner starts to talk about wanting to carry a gun in Mexico, locals don't think, oh, he's protecting himself. What they do think is that they think, oh, this guy's really paranoid. What does he think we are? It sends the complete wrong message to people. It says that you don't trust the community you come to live in or visit. It says that you brought fear with you instead of learning the culture. It says that you're trying to think like a tourist in survival mode, not someone trying to live respectfully in another country or visit. If you truly feel unsafe in Mexico, don't carry a weapon. Either move or just don't come here. Or maybe pick another place to live or visit that's more safe. In Mexico, learn the culture, get to know your neighbors, but don't bring your American self-defense mindset into a place where that's not how safety works. Because down here, your fear isn't protection. And acting like you need a gun to exist, that's not strength, that's disrespect.
Number 20, littering at beaches and resorts.
Nothing kills the beauty of Mexico beaches faster than trash left behind by tourists. Americans pack coolers of beers and drinks and they drink on the sand by the beach and then leave cans, cigarette butts, plastic cups, like the ocean is one gigantic trash can. Now, it's not everybody doing this, but it's super messy and disrespectful. And it's disrespectful to nature and those people that depend on tourism, that work hard to make a little bit of money to survive and feed their family. Kids running barefoot in the sand step on bottle caps. Families setting up picnics find plastic bags blowing into their food. For people who live here, the beach isn't just a vacation spot. It's part of everyday life for them. And seeing that people are leaving trash feels like those people that leave the trash are just stomping through their home. What makes it sting even more is that many Americans brag online how beautiful Mexican beaches are. But then they become the same ones that come here and leave everything behind, leave their empties and ruin the beach. For many Mexicans, beaches are sacred. Every can or plastic cup left behind isn't just ugly. Sea turtles choke, fish swallow plastic, and locals are stuck cleaning up the mess. So don't leave your cup with your drink that you had your drink in from your all-inclusive resort on the beach. Don't leave it on the beach. Throw it in the garbage can. Pick up after yourself, even if you think the hotel staff will come and pick it up for you. And just remember this the next time you're on a beach anywhere in the world. Because in the end, litter isn't just trash in the sand. It's a stain on how Americans are remembered long after they've flown home. Travel has a way of showing who we really are. Every country you step into is someone else's home. And how you act there says everything about the kind of person you truly are. The world doesn't need louder travelers. It needs kinder ones with more respect and more love. Hate is spreading so fast these days in this world, and it doesn't have to. If we took a little bit more time to understand each other, the world would feel a lot kinder, calmer, and a lot more human. If you made it this far in this video, you must have liked it. And I have others, just like this one right here. This is 22 crazy myths about Mexico Americans actually believe. I think you'll enjoy this one. So click it. I'll see you there, and thanks for watching.